Welcome back, guys. Today we get into our next topic of referencing, that is absolute referencing. So when I'm talking about absolute referencing, the row and column references do not change. So when you copy the formula, because the reference is to an actual cell address and uh, an absolute cell reference uses dollar sign in its address. So one of the column letter or one of the row letter or both may have a dollar sign to show that it is an absolute reference. Yeah, we'll see this how it affects our calculation. Yeah. So suppose I assume that each of the salesperson has sold 20 quantities. Yeah. And I want to know what is the unit price at which they have sold this. They have created this sale. So if I do this is equal to, which was the relative reference, dividing the actuals by the assumed quantity 20, which I've assumed that everyone has sold 20 units to get this kind of sale. And if I drag this copy and paste it across for all salesperson, it will give me an incorrect number. Yeah, because my app relative cell reference has chosen the wrong cell. Yeah, because it has to choose 20, wherein if you can see here, the 20 has been dragged or the relative reference has been changed as I move the formula from one cell to another. Yeah, it is referencing to a particular cell which is which does not have any value. So either I have to put 20 in each row, which is not a good solution to get the right answer. But I want it to reference this 20, which is assumed. So every time I change it to certain number, it gets changed. Yeah. So this is where my absolute reference comes into picture. So the cell references remains fixed throughout the column. So here we can see the cell references fixed throughout the column or row, and it is termed as absolute reference. So in order to keep this fixed, yeah, so that it refers to the exact cell location which is mattered in this particular formula, I need to denote it by a dollar sign. Yeah. For example, in this particular example, unit price, my H1 is common for both. So my unit is column common for both. So what I have to do is I have to fix this column by putting a dollar sign next to the row. This is the column reference and this is the row reference. So I am putting a dollar sign saying that this is fixed. So every time I drag this formula, my H1 remains constant. You can see here, my H1 is constant here, my H1 is constant here, H1 is constant here, wherein this particular cell is a relative reference now. It is keeping on changing for every row, wherein the unit price has been changed. The most important thing that you need to know is in order to make a particular cell constant, yeah, suppose I am referring is equal to Raj Mehta. Yeah, you can see this particular cell is what I called a relative reference. Now, if I have to make it a constant, there is a shortcut key that you can use. So the shortcut key is nothing but F4. So let me open my on-screen keyboard so that you can see the changes that are happening. So here is my on-screen keyboard. Every time I press F4, see how the changes occur. So this particular thing, it is making both column as well as the row constant. Again, if I click on F4, it will make the column as relative and row has is become constant. Again, if I press on F4, this time the column has become constant and the row has become relative. If I click on F4 once again, it will bring me back to the normal relative reference. Yeah. So how do I use this relative reference? As I showed you right now, if I have the quantity constant, yeah, if I have this quantity constant, then I have this particular reference being changed to, by pressing F4, I am changing it to a particular constant cell or giving it an absolute reference. So whenever I add dollar sign to row, column, or both, it is called as absolute reference to a particular cell. Yeah. Now, you need to be very careful when you are using this absolute reference. You should avoid it when suppose you have dynamic changes of the cell references required in the formula. Then use the relative reference as we have done earlier. We need to change the cells every time, hence we use relative. When a complex formula evaluates with different ranges of cells, then in this case, absolute reference encounters a problem. So when you are writing a complex for a problem, and if the references are changing, you please avoid using absolute references. Lastly, if you wish to fix cell values only in rows or columns, use mixed references. Yeah. So if you are using fixed references in both rows and column, you will use mixed references. How you'll use mixed references, I'll show you that as well. But I hope this is clear about how we make absolute references in Excel. Yeah. Let me again show you some good example in the case. Suppose I have this values 20, 30, 40. Yeah. And I want to multiply them by 10. Each value I have to multiply by 10. So I say is equal to 10 into, since I have to multiply each value by 10, I'll select this cell and I'll make it absolute. Absolute. Yeah. So I am pressing F4 to make it absolute by having the dollar sign next to column as well as row. Now I'll press enter. Now I can copy this formula and paste it against each cell. Yeah. This is for rows because what I have done here is I have made this particular B9 as a absolute reference to my formula. Yeah. So if I change this, just to give you an idea, it will still not make any difference since I have my row constant. Yeah, my 10th row is not changing. So, or sorry, the 9th row is not changing for B column. Yeah, which I have to multiply. But if I make this as constant and remove the row constant, it will make a lot of difference. So if I copy this, you'll find now my row is changing every time, which is not supposed to be changed. This is what you need to be careful of. So what is the thing that you are going to change? I wanted to multiply each value in this particular cells with 10. However, whenever I drag the formula, it is moving to a different row because I have not made the row as a constant or I have not made the row as absolute reference. So I need to put a dollar here before I drag the formula to the next cell, yeah, to get the right value. So this is what you need to be very careful of. This I showed you in context of row. Same thing can happen for column. So suppose I have this 10, 20, 30, and 40 been written here, and I want to multiply it by 10. Yeah. So what I do is I is equal to this, which has to be constant. So I press F4 to make it constant, multiplied by the value. Then I copy this formula and drag it across for all the necessary value. But if I forget or if I put the dollar sign incorrectly, yeah, I do not I do not make the column as constant, so where my value 10 is available. What will happen is if I try to copy this, it will keep on moving the absolute reference and it will treat it as relative. Yeah. So my column is continuously changing, which is supposed to be fixed. So this is what you need to be very careful of. If I again make this dollar constant and change the row, you'll find it will not have an effect on the row because I'm doing changes on the column part. Wherein over here, I was doing changes on the rows front. Yeah. So when you're changing anything on the row and keeping a value constant, you need to see to it that you need to keep the row with a dollar sign or make it an absolute reference. Same way, if you are making changes across columns, then you need to see to it that you make the column as constant. Yeah. I hope this is pretty clear towards understanding what we are trying to achieve when you are actually making any changes across a particular column or row and you want to keep a particular value fixed, where you want to reference your formula to an absolute value or absolute cell within Excel. This way of using the dollar sign to make a value constant so that it could be referred is called an absolute reference. Yeah. Hope you understood the concept of absolute referencing in Excel. Hope you like this video. Do like it, share it across with your colleagues who want to learn Excel. Comment if you want me to cover any topics which are very important to you in terms of this 365 days of learning. And yes, do not forget to subscribe to my channel because that's how you're going to get all these videos directly to your inbox. Thank you so much.